I just wanted to highlight a couple of things from Chapter 2 that might help you understand socioeconomic status and achievement gaps and how that affects young children and families. So I'm just going to go through a few slides here with you. You'll hear the term socioeconomic status a lot as we work with children and families. Socioeconomic status relies on three things: the parent's education level, the parent's employment status, and family income. Many times when we think of socioeconomic status, we're really only focused on that family income. Like we're looking at, lower class, middle class, upper class, families living in poverty, that sort of thing. But we also have to take into consideration that education levels can affect employment status, and all three of those things both of those things combined are going to affect family income. Education levels and employment status also are going to affect socioeconomic status, obviously, as well. The socioeconomic status of the family is then going to influence child rearing, or how they raise their children, family-child interactions, the quality of family-child interactions, and the quantity of them. If you think about a family that has two working parents, and they're working 8-hour days, so they're gone at least 10 hours a day, and they only have a few hours at night to be with their children, family-child interactions, the number of them could be small, and then also the quality of them is also going to depend on things like stress on the parents from their jobs or their employment. If the parents have to work more when they get home, just the stress of everyday living of, think of all of the things that a family does in the evening, places to be, things to do, dinners to cook, laundry to do, homework to do, other children to take care of. That can impact family-child interactions as well. Language development and learning, discipline, the kind of discipline, what kind of things they do to their child to guide them, and then also the amount. Like if families are stressed because they're living in poverty, it's likely that the amount of discipline is going to increase, and then the harshness of the discipline might increase as well. And then also future plans like education and employment. These statistics are a little bit old, but in general, there is a poverty guideline. Unfortunately, we know that the youngest children are the poorest. Over 1 in 4 children under the age of 5 were poor, which was nearly 5 million back in 2014. We know statistics have probably changed and adjusted, particularly because of COVID as well. The thing that concerns me about this is that the youngest children are the poorest. And we know that early years make a matter, and they make a difference in development. And so it's important that we are providing services to children and families so that they can get a good start. There's two different types of poverty. There's generational poverty and situational poverty. Situational poverty happens when something happens to the family and there's a lack of resources, like a death in the family or someone has lost their job. Generational poverty is defined as being in poverty for 2 or more generations. And there's an article here that you are free to read on your own. Despite the type of poverty, we know that child well-being is directly related to poverty status. Regardless of race or ethnicity, children living in poverty are much more likely than children living above the poverty line to have developmental delays, drop out of high school, and have a child during the teen years. I want to make it very clear that this is what the research tells us. These are statistics that we know. That doesn't mean that this happens for every child that lives in poverty. So if you say, I grew up living in poverty and I'm okay and my parents were okay, that's great. Yay, I'm very happy. But statistically, it means that this is likely. Some other risk factors, the mom having mental health problems, having an authoritarian discipline style, poor interactions with the child, did not complete high school graduation. The family in general is probably a minority. The head of the household is semi-skilled or unskilled, an absent father, several stressful events in the past 12 months, and a large family size. Again, these risk factors are based on research and specific data. It doesn't necessarily mean that that happens for every family. Now, effects of poverty on young children: low birth weight, unhealthy diet, food insecurity, behavior issues, fewer learning experiences, moving frequently, lack of quality schools, low self-esteem, learning problems. Poverty has a major effect. And so these are the things that we need to consider in the early childhood field when we're working with children and families. The good thing that we know is that when children participate in high quality early childhood programs, we know that they are likely to have higher academic achievement, which means that they get higher grades and they're more likely to graduate from high school. They are less likely to repeat a grade or need special education. They're more likely to attend college and less likely to be in the criminal justice system. So when we put those two ideas together, we know that children living in poverty can benefit from high quality early childhood programs. So some of the things that we are trying to fight and deal with can be helped by high quality early childhood programs. Research also shows us that as adults who have participated in high quality early childhood programs, the adults are more likely to earn more, own a home, less likely to depend on public assistance, less likely to use tobacco. They have lower rates of teenage pregnancy, and fewer arrests, including drug-related arrests. What can we do in general? Licensed early childhood teachers are important. The more education you get, the better teacher you are, the better you can support children and families. Professional development for teachers working with children in poverty is also helpful. Increasing instructional time within the school day or the school year. Research on retention, it means like holding somebody back a school year, tells us that retention doesn't actually work. What they need is remediation during the school year. So they go on to the next grade with their peers, but they're getting help in the classroom to bring up their skills. And then, of course, smaller class sizes. One of the things I want to highlight here, particularly when we are looking, and I'm going to go back here to risk factors for families living in poverty. So one of the things that we know in early childhood is we have high quality programs, but we can't always get them to the people that need it. There's barriers for families. There's transportation. There are issues. There is language barriers. There are people that just don't know how important early childhood is. And so those are some of the factors that human service programs work on so that they can get families connected with the information that they need, and then hopefully we can get those kiddos into high quality programs. You can feel free to, I'm going to post this so you can, so that it's also in the modules for this week. Feel free to read through the rest of it. The information on achievement gaps comes specifically from the book as well.